Welcome to the channel. Hit subscribe and dive into stories that'll stay with you long after the video ends. Let's begin. The note shouldn't have been there. Not on a night like this. Not after the way that man had looked at her. Lena stared at the small folded square resting under the empty coffee cup, its edges damp from the ring of condensation. The diner around her hummed with its usual late-night hush, the ticking wall clock, the low murmur of the radio, the soft rattle of dishes from the kitchen. But all of that felt distant now, muffled by the quiet thud inside her chest. She hadn't seen the man leave. 1 second he was there, alone in the far booth, the one half hidden behind the pillar, and the next he was gone. No goodbye, no sound of the bell over the door, not even the scrape of his chair on the tiles. Just the note. She reached for it slowly as though it might burn her fingertips. Her breath came shallow. Her mind replayed the moment he had walked in, soaked from the storm outside. He pushed open the door with a trembling hand, water dripping from the brim of his hood. His clothes were dark, too dark, clinging heavily to a frame that looked like it hadn't felt warmth in days. He kept his head low, but even from behind the counter, Lena had noticed his eyes, unsettlingly bright, strangely alert, like he was tracking something none of them could see. He had barely spoken when she asked what he wanted. "Just coffee," he murmured. A pause, and a place to sit where no one will bother me. There'd been a softness in his voice, but something else too, an edge, sharp and worn, like a man who'd been running for far too long. Lena had nodded, trying not to stare as he slid into the booth, shoulders hunched tight, one hand closed around something in his jacket pocket. He never took that hand out, not once. She told herself not to jump to conclusions. Not every man with a hidden hand was dangerous. Not every stranger sought trouble. But the storm outside had made the world feel smaller, more fragile, and the diner lights flickered with every gust of wind. Every time she glanced his way, he seemed to be listening, intently, to sounds she couldn't hear. And once, just once, she saw fear flash across his face. Real fear. The kind that comes from knowing something terrible is close. Now, with the note staring up at her, that moment pressed against her ribs. Lena swallowed and eased the paper open. Just a few lines, handwritten in a hurried, uneven scrawl. Her eyes moved over the first sentence, and she felt her throat tighten. By the time she read the last line, she had to grip the table to steady herself. The words didn't make sense. They shouldn't make sense, but they did. And that was the worst part. As the storm rattled the windows and a burst of wind swept through the trees outside, Lena folded the note back up with trembling hands. The diner lights flickered again, longer this time, and she felt the cold slide down her spine. The man hadn't left a tip. He'd left a warning, and it was meant for her. Lena didn't move at first. The note felt heavier than paper, heavier than ink, like it carried someone else's heartbeat. She slipped it into her apron pocket, keeping her fingers on it as though ensuring it couldn't disappear on its own. The diner felt different now, too bright in some corners, too shadowed in others. Every familiar sound seemed stretched thin, the clatter of a fork, the hiss from the kitchen, even the rain tapping against the windows like impatient fingers. From behind the counter, Marco poked his head out of the swinging door. "You all right out there?" he asked, wiping his hands on a towel. Lena forced a breath. "Yeah, just tired." Marco's eyes narrowed. "That guy in the booth bothering you?" She hesitated. If she told him what the note said, even just the first line, it would pull everything into the open. The questions, the fear, the sense that something had been set in motion the moment that man stepped inside. "No," she said. "He barely talked." Marco shrugged. "If he comes back or gives you any trouble, just say the word." Then he disappeared into the kitchen again, humming a tune that sounded too cheerful for a night like this. Lena glanced toward the booth. Empty now, still damp from where he'd sat. A lone drop of rainwater slid off the edge of the vinyl seat and hit the floor with a soft pat. That tiny sound carried through the room, sharp and clear, and she knew she couldn't pretend everything was normal. Not after what she'd read. "They know who you are. They're coming tonight. Leave before the lights go out." The handwriting had been shaky, rushed, the letters uneven as though written in the dark or while the writer's hand trembled. But there was no mistaking the urgency, no mistaking the fact that he meant her. That last line, "leave before the lights go out," lodged itself in her chest like a nail. She turned toward the door, half expecting to see someone watching through the glass, but the storm blurred everything into streaks of black and silver. The streetlights beyond flickered behind wavering sheets of rain. Get it together, she whispered to herself. Maybe the man was delusional. Maybe he was scared of someone else, and she had just happened to be the one who poured his coffee. Maybe the note wasn't about her at all. But then, why leave it under her cup? She moved to wipe down a table that didn't need wiping, if only to keep her hands busy. Her reflection in the window stared back, eyes wide, shoulders tense. She didn't look like someone ready to face anything coming for her. She looked like someone waiting for a truth she wasn't prepared to hear. A sudden rumble of thunder rolled across the sky, deep and sustained. The diner lights dimmed, then steadied. Lena felt her pulse spike. Leave before the lights go out. She reached instinctively for the note in her pocket, pressing her fingertips to the crease, grounding herself in the reality of it. The guy hadn't seemed dangerous. Haunted, yes, but not unhinged. Something had been chasing him, something real enough to carve fear into his voice. And if he believed that danger was headed toward her, then she didn't have much time. The front door chimed. Lena spun around. A figure stepped inside, hood up, dripping rain onto the tiles, and paused just inside the threshold, scanning the diner with slow, deliberate stillness. Not the same man, someone else. And they were looking for something, or someone, her. The figure didn't move at first. Just stood there with the door slowly closing behind them, the wind catching the hem of their coat. Water pooled at their feet, spreading across the tiles in a thin, dark sheen. Lena's breath stalled. The hooded stranger lifted their head, and although their face was still shadowed, she felt the weight of their gaze settle on her, calm, assessing, almost clinical. Like they were marking something, checking something off a list. She forced her voice to steady. "Welcome in, sit anywhere you'd like." The figure didn't sit. Instead, they walked slow, soundless steps down the length of the diner, eyes drifting over each booth, each table, every corner where someone might hide. They moved with purpose, with certainty, as though expecting to find a ghost left behind in the cushions. Lena's skin prickled. Something inside her said, "Run." Something deeper whispered, "Don't draw attention." Marco pushed through the kitchen door, the steamy air puffing out around him. "Hey, sorry, storm's messing up the grill again. Who just came in?" The stranger turned their head toward his voice. Their face came into the light, sharp features, no expression. Eyes so cold and flat they looked carved from stone. They watched Marco for a long moment, then gave a tight, polite nod, an odd gesture that only made the atmosphere heavier. "I'll be in the back," Marco muttered, sensing something off. He retreated behind the swinging door, letting it clap shut. The stranger finally chose a booth, not randomly. They sat exactly where the first man had sat, same posture, same angle, as though tracing his silhouette. Lena's fingers twitched. She grabbed a menu and approached, keeping her steps steady. "Coffee?" she asked quietly. "Yes." The voice was soft but flat. It held no warmth, no tiredness, no tremble, just a single solid note. When she returned with the steaming mug, the stranger's hand slid forward, stopping the cup before it could fully touch the table. Their fingers were gloved, black leather, rain-slick, immaculate. "You saw him," they said. Lena froze. "Who?" she asked, but the quiver in her voice betrayed her. The stranger tilted their head slightly, studying her like one might study a puzzle missing its final piece. Tall man, dark coat, came in earlier. Her heart hammered. She tried to keep her face neutral. He was just a customer. The stranger said nothing for a moment, then leaned back, eyes narrowing as though deciding how much she already knew. Did he leave anything behind? She felt the note burn against her thigh. "No," she lied. The diner lights flickered again, just for a heartbeat, but the stranger's eyes snapped upward, tracking the bulbs as though the flicker meant something more. They stood. "You should go home." Lena's breath caught. "What? You're done for the night." "I can't just leave," she whispered. "My shift." "You should go," they repeated, quieter now. "Before you can't." A coldness spilled down her spine. The first man's words echoed in her chest. "Leave before the lights go out." The stranger stepped out of the booth and walked past her, heading toward the door. For the briefest moment, their gloved hand brushed the edge of her apron. Intentional, subtle, like a warning passed through, a whisper of contact. Then they left the diner without looking back. The door swung shut, silence settled, and Lena realized something terrifying. That wasn't the person she needed to fear. That was the person trying to keep her alive. Lena stood rooted to the floor long after the stranger vanished into the storm. The wind howled against the windows, pushing sheets of rain across the glass like restless hands. The diner, warm moments ago, now felt like a hollow shell, like something waiting to be breached. Her pulse thudded in her throat. She had to move. She had to think. But her legs felt heavy, her mind scattered, her breath shallow enough to sting. She reached for the back of a chair to steady herself, grounding her fingers in the cool metal. Marco pushed through the kitchen door again, concern wrinkling his brow. "Lena, you look pale. What happened?" She opened her mouth, but the words tangled. "Someone just came in," she managed. "They were strange." "Strange how?" She shook her head. "I think they were looking for the man from earlier." Marco frowned. "Did he leave something? Cause a problem?" Her hand drifted to her pocket. "No," she said softly, "nothing like that." Marco studied her a moment longer. "Do you want to go home? I can close up early. Storm's terrible anyway." The offer tempted her deeply, but something inside her pushed back. A tug, a whisper, a warning shaped like intuition. If she left now, would that be safer, or exactly what someone wanted? Before she could answer, a new sound cut through the diner. A quiet tap, then another, someone knocking on the back door. Marco turned. "That's odd. Delivery guys don't come in weather like tap, tap, slower this time, more deliberate." A third knock, louder. Marco wiped his hands and started toward the hallway leading to the stockroom. "I swear if this is Clyde dropping off produce in the middle of a hurricane." "Wait," Lena whispered. He paused. "What?" But she didn't know how to explain it. She just felt it. Felt something wrong pressing against the edges of the building. The lights hummed overhead, softer, with a faint tremble she hadn't noticed before. Marco shook his head. "It's fine. I'll tell whoever it is to get out of the rain. Maybe they need help." He disappeared into the hallway. The tapping stopped. Silence expanded, thick and heavy. "Marco?" Lena called, her voice breaking at the end. No answer. She stepped closer to the hallway, each footfall echoing louder than the last. The air felt colder back here, as if the temperature dropped between one breath and the next. A faint draft curled along the floor. "Marco?" She tried again, still nothing. She reached the end of the hallway and turned toward the stockroom, just in time to see the back door drifting open. Not fully, just a few inches, enough for the storm's breath to slip in. Enough to show the wet footprints leading inside. Her stomach flipped. "Marco?" she whispered. She edged closer, fingers grazing the wall for balance. There, beside the crates of vegetables, lay Marco's towel, damp, twisted on the floor, as though dropped in a hurry. The rain outside roared louder, as if something massive had shifted. A figure stood in the doorway then, just a silhouette framed by lightning. A shape neither tall nor short, its outline distorted by the storm/darkness behind it. It didn't move. It didn't speak. It simply stood there, blocking the exit, its presence filling the small room with an almost suffocating pressure. Lena stepped back, heart pounding. The first man's warning clawed its way up her memory. "They're coming tonight." The silhouette leaned forward slowly, like a predator testing distance. Lena turned and ran. She didn't look back. Couldn't. Every instinct screamed to move, to get out, to breathe air that wasn't thick with fear. Her shoes skidded across the slick hallway tiles as she sprinted toward the front of the diner. Her hand slapped the counter as she rounded it, breath tearing from her chest in sharp bursts. The storm outside boomed again. Long, rolling thunder that made the lights tremble. She grabbed the phone. Dead. No dial tone, just a flat, silent hum. The lights dimmed, wavered, recovered, not much time. The note pulsed in her pocket like a heartbeat. "Leave before the lights go out." She looked toward the stockroom hallway, empty. But the dark seemed to deepen there, like the shadows were thickening on purpose. "Marco," she whispered, and her voice cracked. She'd go back for him if she could, but she wasn't equipped for whatever had walked through that door, whatever had followed the first man here, whatever he tried to warn her about. A loud crack of wind slammed against the glass storefront. The diner sign outside flickered wildly, throwing jittery reflections across the floor. She reached for her coat hanging on the hook near the register. Then a voice, not from the hallway, from behind her. "You waited too long." She spun. The first man, the drenched, trembling man from earlier, stood inside the diner once more. Hood down now, face ashen, eyes bright with a feverish urgency. He looked worse than before, soaked to the bone and shaking like someone holding back a collapse. "How?" she stammered. "You left." "I had to make sure they weren't behind me." He grabbed her arm gently but with unmistakable desperation. "You need to leave now." "Who are they?" she breathed. "What do they want?" Another flicker of the lights, longer this time. A low hum filled the air, vibrating the fixtures. "They track messages," he whispered. "Movements, people who talk to the wrong person or help the wrong one." His voice shook. "I shouldn't have written the note, but I couldn't risk speaking. Cameras, mics, they're everywhere." Lena swallowed hard. Marco, he went to the back door. Someone I know. The man's eyes glistened with something like grief. I'm sorry. A chill swept through her. The lights dipped again, this time staying dim, strained, as if fighting to stay alive. The man's grip tightened. We have seconds. Follow me. He pulled her toward the front door, his movements frantic and unsteady. The storm clawed at the glass as they reached it. He shoved it open, and cold rain hit her like a slap. Where are we going? She yelled over the wind. Anywhere but here, he said. Once the power cuts, they'll take whoever's inside. They ran into the parking lot, water splashing around their ankles, wind whipping their clothes. Behind them, the diner glowed weakly, the lights flickering like a dying beacon in the storm. Halfway across the lot, Lena stopped. A silhouette stood beside the dumpster, hooded, perfectly still. Another shape appeared near the road, then another and another. 5 figures forming a loose ring around the diner, all watching, all waiting. The man pulled her harder. Don't look at them, run. She forced her legs to move, pushing through the sheets of rain, breath burning, heart slamming against her ribs. Behind them, the diner lights flickered one final time. Then darkness, total. A sound rose from the shadows, soft, synchronized footsteps. The man jerked her behind a parked truck, chest heaving. They know you now, he whispered. But you're still alive. That means you're not one of them. Not one of them, not yet. Lena drew a shaking breath as the storm swallowed their hiding place. What do we do? She whispered. The man looked toward the road, toward the darkness ahead where no shapes waited. We run, he said, and we don't stop until morning. Thanks for watching. Subscribe and visit the channel for more real-life stories.